Joining us right now for more on this is Dr. Scott Gottlieb. He's the former FDA commissioner and a CNBC contributor who also serves on the boards not only of Pfizer, but also Illumina. He's got a new book that's out. It's called Uncontrolled Spread, Why COVID-19 Crushed Us and How We Can Defeat the Next Pandemic. That book, by the way, highly anticipated. It's out tomorrow. It's a great read, and we're going to talk more about that in just a moment, Scott. But let's talk about the news of this morning, of the morning with this Pfizer application, or this pending application that they're going to have. What's the timeline from here? What happens next? When can we expect that this will actually be available for children?
Well, look, Pfizer could be in a position to file very quickly. The data came a little earlier than some were expecting. And depending on how long the FDA takes to review the application, whether it's a 4-week review or a 6-week review, you could have a vaccine available to children as early as probably by the end of October. Perhaps it slips a little bit into November. But I think if the review goes well with the FDA, if the data supports the authorization of this vaccine, subject to the FDA's careful review, you could have a vaccine very soon. And again, as Meg said, this is a 10 microgram dose, so it's effectively the same vaccine that's available for adults and children over the age of 12, just in a lower dose. Pfizer tested 3 different doses to find the dose that struck the best balance between providing optimal efficacy on par with what we saw in 16 to 25-year-olds, the group that it was compared to, and they were looking at that in terms of measuring antibody response. So the antibody response was comparable with this lower dose to what you saw in the older kids, but trying to minimize reactogenicity, immune-related side effects, vaccine-related side effects like injection site reactions or fevers, trying to find a much more tolerable dose for the young children. And this dosage, the 10 microgram dose, seems to strike the best balance between those two competing objectives.
The different dosage will require different vials. As you've explained to us in the past, you're going to have new vials that need to be created and then sent out and distributed. And I guess I just wonder how, if at all, that slows down the process too, where we are in the stages on that, and where we'll be taking kids to get vaccinated.
Yeah, it shouldn't slow down things at all. This has been prepped for a very long time. As a matter of logistics, the company's been preparing for this. You know, when you have a formulation or a dosage that's smaller, you don't want to use the vials that you used for the adult dosage, because you don't want to have to go in and out of a vial too many times, because that increases the chances that you can introduce infection into the vial or contamination. So you want a smaller unit to withdraw from in the children, and that's actually what's being created. That shouldn't be any kind of logistical hurdle because it's been prepped. I would expect that this vaccine is going to be accessible in the same places that we go to get our adult vaccinations, in pharmacies, in pediatricians' offices, if pediatricians do want to stock the vaccine. But it's probably going to be larger practices that ultimately stock the vaccine and provide injections within a doctor's office. I think a lot of children will probably end up getting vaccinated at either vaccination sites that are organized around schools or communities or inside pharmacies.
Scott, let's also talk a little bit about the news from the FDA on Friday. This was the vote of the FDA panel considering booster shots or third shots for individuals. The first vote, which was for a third shot for anybody over the age of 16, was voted down. They did vote to approve the idea of anybody over age 65. But I just wonder, with the number of people I know who have had breakthrough infections, fully vaccinated people who have gotten infected, if there is something that you think more needs to be done or not.
Well, look, I think the regulators and the public health authorities are going to take a more staged approach to making boosters available. And they want to start with an age population for whom the benefits are very clear. And that's an older age cohort, people probably above the age of 60. If you look at the Israeli data, 65 wasn't an unreasonable place to make a cut. CDC may walk that down, walk that up, and provide some nuance around that. But that's the age where you see more breakthrough infections. You see more evidence that those breakthrough infections are leading to more severe disease. And you also have a population that's further out from their initial vaccination. And so I think what they're going to do is make make a staged entry of these boosters, continue to collect more information, and ultimately make a decision about walking it down the age continuum after we collect more U.S. data around the experience with the boosters. Logistically, probably it provides for more ability for senior citizens to go in and get those boosters, so everyone's not going to be rushing the pharmacies at the same time. So I don't think it's an imprudent way to approach this in a more staged fashion. I would expect that ultimately that's going to be walked down the age continuum over time as we collect more data and demonstrate that there is benefit to be ascribed to getting a booster, even if you're, let's say, 50 or younger. And remember, the authorization that the FDA's advisory panel recommended also included people who are at risk of severe disease. So that could include people who have comorbidities, other kinds of medical conditions that put them at risk of a bad outcome from COVID. But it could also include people who are at risk of coming into contact with COVID or some combination of those two attributes. So I think it is a little bit broader than just a very strict age cutoff, if in fact the advisory committee of CDC ultimately adopts the FDA recommendation.